Welcome. And thank you so much for joining me today on Naughty Bites podcast. Mandeep, you're a woman who means business. But what's your naughty pleasure when you get home after a stressful day?
Oh my God, my naughty pleasure. It's actually it's actually pretty boring and dull, to be honest. I try to make time for myself in the evenings. So yeah, I'll probably do. So it probably sounds really boring, but I think it's something that everybody should do. Is spend time with myself. So I'll either watch a TV show. I'm not watching anything right now before you put me on the spot, but I'll just kind of do something which doesn't require a lot of brain power. So and I'm actually giving that as an example because sometimes I feel a bit naughty doing it because I'm working all the time. So when I do that, I feel like I'm getting myself into trouble because I'm not working. So that's my naughty pleasure. And you know what? I'll come out of this interview and I'll be like, maybe I should have said this, or
because right now I'm thinking pajamas, fluffy slippers.
Oh yeah,
chocolate bar and binge watching TV.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think probably not so much the chocolate, but definitely remote in hand, pajamas on, and just kind of kicking back and trying to unwind and do something which doesn't require a lot of brain power.
Oh, that's awesome. I think we need to do more of that.
Yeah.
So as an entrepreneur, can you tell me a bit more about your background and what drove you to set up Red Media Live?
Wow. Okay. So how long have you got?
Don't worry. You've got time.
I think I have always wanted to work in marketing. But at that time, so when I was maybe 13 or 14, I don't think I knew what it was, because when I was growing up, there wasn't really kind of like, it wasn't as popular as it is now. Even the term marketing or PR or obviously social media wasn't even a thing then. All of these kind of career choices weren't really kind of like at the forefront.
Yeah.
But I knew that I was creative and I knew that I wanted to do something, which was interacting with people. And I wanted to be a part of big projects. I didn't understand what that was then, but I wanted to be a part of things that had impact. And I knew, the only thing I knew is that I wanted to work in media. I want to work in media. So I did that. I worked in media. I worked in marketing roles and PR. And then in 2012, I set up my own agency, which I ran for many years. And then towards the end of kind of running that agency, influencer marketing became quite popular, and a lot of influencers were doing crazy numbers, and growing at a rapid rate. And fan bases were equally kind of like, invested in them. And I started to kind of like realize that actually if brands were to work with these influencers, it could actually be quite beneficial for them, because the reach that they have and the engagement that they have and the connection that they have with their fans was very, very authentic and very raw. So I, at the tail end of kind of, running that agency, I started to do influencer events. So working with talent and touring with them. I kind of really understood, it just got me to understand that dynamic a lot better. So then when I ended up setting up Red Media Live, which was probably not very long after I stopped working at that agency, I realized that I actually just want to focus on influencer marketing, because I felt that there were certain things within that role that I enjoyed. So I enjoyed working with talent. I've done talent management in the past, through sort of PR work that I've done. So it allows me to still kind of work with talent, which I love to do. And I kind of thrive off that energy of influencers and, whether it's musicians or celebrities. I think because secretly it's like, we all kind of like, you know, love to kind of like lead that life, I think. But like, no, I wouldn't want that life, but I thrive off that energy that that they have. And because then I was now working, because I've always worked with brands and I've worked in marketing, I understood that there were what the requirements were for marketing teams and what they would what would work for them, you know, to kind of, you know, as part of their strategy. So I thought, why not combine my passion for talent management and then my skills in working in marketing and just kind of focus on that. So now Red Media Live is an agency that focuses on influencer partnerships and predominantly working with kind of, you know, diverse talent, you know, which I'm, you know, passionate about. And, you know, just working with brands to kind of ensure that they understand that it's important to have diverse pool of talent when they're promoting their products. So, yeah, that's basically.
I could listen to this all day. Like, I've got so many questions running through my head.
Right.
But like, what skill? Like, you said that you were creative, but what skills did you realize that you have that made you so effective in this role? Like, because, you know, for many South Asians, when you said marketing, it's so true. South Asians don't understand what it is. Or when you say media, you don't understand what it is, because they've been raised, the generation before us have been raised in an industry where it's like, oh, you're going to be a doctor, or you're going to be an accountant, or you're going to be, I don't know, something in medicine, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
How did you kind of step away from that, and did you get the support from your family? Sorry, there's like so many questions in one.
There is no. So I think that I think a lot of people probably, you know, grow up wanting to do various different roles, and obviously your environment really affects the choices that you make. And yes, like you say, it's extremely common in South Asian families for you know, our parents, our elders, it could be elder siblings, they kind of push you towards careers that are historically very secure, and you know, they feel like if you were to go down that path, then you won't have any problems with money and raising families, etc., etc. And I understand where they're coming from, because obviously we come from migrant families, and when you're a migrant, an immigrant, you know, your priority is just surviving, and you're in survival mode for most of your life until you know that your children are settled, and all these, you know, commitments and all the sacrifices that you made for your family, it was worth it, because our children went on to become doctors and lawyers and accountants and have the secure jobs and secure incomes coming in. So I understand where they're coming from, but obviously as humans, you know, we have our own choices and our own wants and our own needs. And I was quite fortunate in a way that my parents didn't really force me into any career. And they kind of actually allowed me a lot more freedom than my friends had at that time when I was growing up. So I started university in 1999. Guys, 1999. Yes. Can you remember that? That was so long ago. Yes, that's me. Yeah. So in 1999, and a lot of my friends went to university, they graduated, and they got married within a couple of years after that. And I didn't. And that was because my family didn't put any pressure on me to either go down a certain career path, or that my worth was just, once you graduated, you have to get married. So I think that I always felt like, because of that, and it's because of that only, I feel like I knew that I mean, it sounds quite dramatic, but I felt like, you know, there was more to my career than just that, and my life than just kind of doing all of those things. And I knew that I wanted to do bigger things, and so they kind of allowed me that independence to, you know, figure out what I wanted to do. So to answer your question, I think a lot of people want to choose different career paths, but it's their environment that will dictate whether they will be able to do those things or not, especially if you're, you know, South Asian, or if you come from a very rich kind of culture like ours. So yeah, because of that, I was able to pursue it. And but at the same time, because I didn't have that direction, I didn't really know how to get into this industry. And so a lot of the things that I ended up doing happened by pure chance and coincidence. And maybe that's universe kind of like making it happen for me. I don't know if that's what it was. So yeah, a lot of things happen by chance, a little bit by accident. And I ended up getting my first job with an agency called Media Moguls, who were the biggest sort of PR agency at that time, and the only agency, I believe, at that time who were working with diverse audiences, diverse communities, and tailoring, speaking to brands about how they can tailor their message for a diverse audience. So yeah, came across them by pure chance and accident. And then I literally I did my work experience there, and then when I finished work experience, they offered me a job. So I was quite lucky in that sense.
Wow.
Yeah. So then I worked there. Yeah.
Media Moguls was with they ran the advertising for Bendy Like Beckham as well.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. So I was actually at the premiere for Bendy Like Beckham, because the agency did the PR for the film. So and I remember that there was a DVD which was released of Bend It Like Beckham, and it was like a special version, and at the end they had like snippets of the premiere. And I remember there's probably like, you could probably see like that much of my face in it. And I remember thinking, I've got to buy it. And I went and physically bought the DVD copy, and I'm trying to find it now at my parents' house. I said, "Oh, do you know where it is?" They don't have a clue. But I was so proud of that. I was so proud of that. And I got so many opportunities when I worked at Media Moguls. And honestly, it's so Raj and Anjana who ran the agency, they really kind of took me under their wings. And I had an amazing time there. And so and then I stayed within the Asian media industry. I went from there, I went on to Club Asia Radio. I don't know if you remember that.
Yes.
Who remembers that? So yeah, it was the first kind of radio station that was targeting the second, third generation of South Asians in the UK. It really was kind of our voice at that time, from a music perspective, from the DJs, the presenters. It was pretty much everything that represented us. And I, again, fortunate enough to get a job there, and I worked there for a number of years. After that, I went on to work for the BBC Asian Network. So I worked in
That's amazing.
So I worked in the comms department there. And then
But it's amazing.
I feel like I'm just like reading out my CV. I'm like, what is this then?
I'm like, but like you said, because it's so different. It's really difficult to know where to start, on how to go, and your talent speaks for itself. So although you think it's by chance, sometimes I think when you work hard for something, you get it. It's like you've got to work, but then you've made your path, but without any guidance, if that makes sense. It's like, because you've not got any elder to go out, I work in marketing, I can help you out. You've done this by yourself in an industry that's so unheard of in this community that we've been raised in. And I think it's quite impressive, because it's really hard. And I think for your family as well, to see how successful you've become, they're like, they'll feel proud in the way they've raised you, because the way you've channeled your career and made it successful.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I've never really looked at it from that perspective. So thank you, for helping me kind of like appreciate my own journey. Yes, there wasn't any support, or there wasn't any guidance. And, I was very determined as, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, up until that point when, I didn't have a full-time job then. I was still studying. I was very determined. It was like I didn't know, but I kind of knew. Like I knew I wanted to work in media, and I will actually tell you what happened. So I was at Brunel. So I studied at Brunel University in West London, and I again, you know, I'd gone through, so I did like at that time they called it a sandwich course. So it was a 4-year degree, but then you do 6-month placement in the second year, and then the final year do a 6-month as well. So I was coming up to kind of like, I did my first work experience, and that was fine, but it wasn't really what I wanted to do. And then I was looking for my next work experience, and I thought, no, I really want to, you know, so at that time there were magazines like Snoop that had just come out, which was, yeah, I know. Can you remember that?
Oh my God. Okay, cool.
Yeah. And then Asian Woman, you know, was really popular at that time. And, you know, there was a few little kind of things like, you know, happening, you know, they were bubbling away, like, you know, within the Asian media kind of scene, and, you know, TV channels. And so that was a real draw. That to me, I thought, okay, I'm brown, I'm South Asian, and I'm proud, and I want to work in an industry that knows who I am and who I'm about, but it's still media. So I knew that I knew that I wanted to work in that industry. So, you know, I'd reached out to, you know, magazines, or I reached out to people, and I said, look, you know, can I do work experience? Can I do, like, you know, wasn't really getting any luck, because I can imagine it being quite cliquey in the sense that they're small companies. They probably don't have, you know, huge budgets to take people on. So they're only going to really work with people who they know and who can do work. And I was a complete outsider. So one day, my friend called me, and she's coming from Birmingham to see me. And so we all know about Tandy coaches and Barrow coaches that travel from like up and down the country. But, so she calls me. She's like, look, I'm getting the coach, and I'm going to come to London to see you. I was at Brunel. So she said, the bus is going to, this is going somewhere. So she said to me, look, the bus is going to terminate in Wembley. So why don't you come to Wembley? You're in Uxbridge, just come to Wembley, pick me up, and then we'll go back there. I said, fine. So I don't think she had a mobile. You know, this is what, 99 or something, or 2000. And I don't know if she had a mobile. I don't know what happened. So I get to Wembley, bus has not turned up. I'm waiting. And I thought, you know what, I may as well just go for a little walk, and I'll come back in about half an hour. So then on Wembley, on the high, not on the high street, but there's a street there with all the Indian shops.
Ealing Road.
Ealing Road.
Yeah, because my massy lived around the corner, literally around the corner.
Yeah. So then I thought, you know what, let me go for a little walk. So I've gone for a walk, and I see like a crowd of people just standing like on the street, and I was like, oh, what's going on here? And then I noticed there's camera guys, but there's a lot of brown people around this whole like project. I don't know what was happening. So then I'm really curious now, because there's cameras there, and obviously because I'm, you know, kind of, you know, drawn to the media side of things. Oh, what's going on? Then I realized that everybody who was standing there was brown, and, you know, the cameraman, and there was a photographer. And I thought, then as I got much closer, Nina Wadia was there.
Oh my God.
And Nina Wadia was being filmed. And I was like, this is really insanely weird, like what's going on, but like still like immediately drawn to it and wanting to know more. Then I started speaking to the team that were there, and I said, what are you doing? And they said, oh, you know, we're filming for I think it was a British Heart Foundation.
Okay.
Because they're doing a campaign to target South Asians about, you know, awareness campaign.
Yeah.
And I just immediately was like, I need to be involved in this. And I said, who are you guys? And they said, and they were like, look, we're an agency. They were kind of fobbing me off, because they were just like, who are you? You've just turned up here. We're trying to work. And they said, look, you need to go and speak to that lady over there. She's the boss, and tell her what it is that you're looking to do. And, you know, because I was just like, I want a work experience. I want to work here. I want to like, go and speak to that lady over there. The lady was Anjana.
Oh my God.
Yeah. The lady was Anjana. Wow. That was Media Moguls. That was set up there.
Yeah.
If my friend hadn't have been late with her on her Tandy coach, I wouldn't have had that conversation with them. I would have stayed put, picked her up, and then just gone back to the train station. I spoke to Anjana within 5 minutes, 10 minutes. She was like, yeah, here's my card, you know, email me, whatever, you know. And I was just like, so tired, like a puppy, you know, like, hung around for a little bit. But I thought, you know what, I better head back. And, you know, I went back, met my friend, and we, you know, went back to university, immediately got in touch with them. I don't know whether I emailed or called or whatever. They invited me for an interview. And then before you know it, I've been offered a work placement there.
Wow.
Yeah. So I always will remember that moment, because that happened by chance. That whole meeting happened by chance. Had I not been there, I don't know whether I would have ever known about Media Moguls. Maybe I would have, maybe I would have done, but I just don't know how I would have known about them and their work if I hadn't been there at that time. And that really was the catapult, like, to my career, because that's the moment when I started working there, I realized this is what I want to do. And that was the moment for me. And that really drove my whole career. So going on to Club Asia, which again was, South Asian radio, then going on to BBC Asia Network, which again was South Asian, and then going on to doing what I'm doing, really started at that chance meeting on Ealing Road.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's like a ripple effect. That pebble that you throw in the sea or the lake, and it just kind of just everything kind of manifests.
Yes, it was that. It was like
remarkable.
that. Yeah. So yeah, I guess that's then when I got my direction that I needed so much, and
Wow.
that just kind of sealed the deal almost, that this is it for me. And and I've made some bad decisions as well, don't get me wrong. I've made some probably questionable decisions about my career choices and projects that I've been involved in, but I don't have any regrets. I don't have any regrets at all. And I think everything's happened for a reason, and which is why, I'm here today.
Wow. Because some of the things you were saying, I was like, oh, that sounds so familiar, because it's similar to what I've kind of done, but we'll speak about it later. But, but then I have to ask you, what does cultural identity mean to you? Like, do you think it shaped the person that you've become today?
Yes.
It's a really tough question. Sorry, but
no, I think cultural identity. Okay, so it's funny because I actually talk about this in this exhibition that I've just literally released. And as I mentioned to you earlier on, there's a documentary that I'm working on alongside the exhibition, and I'm asked the question in the exhibition, the exact same question, and it's about identity. And and I've kind of looked back and asked myself, at what point did I know what my identity was? And I don't think I knew what my identity was growing up. I was always very proud to be South Asian, and even at a school where it's predominantly white, I was always very vocal about who I am and what I stand for. And a lot of that I feel comes from my upbringing. So my dad's always been very, very proud. He's always said, don't shy away from who you are. It's very important that you're not made to feel inferior because you speak a different language or you wear different clothes. So I think because I've been brought up, because my dad brought me up to be extremely proud of who I was, I think that has also shaped the career choice that I took. So marketing is one side of it, but focusing on South Asian or diverse or multicultural marketing, I think stems from that kind of real feeling of being proud of being South Asian. And I don't think I knew that at that time, but now that I'm kind of sort of coming into my 40s now, and I'm you kind of get to this point where of acceptance, and that to me I feel like I feel like that being brought up in that environment shaped my career path in that sense. And now I'm reflecting back and thinking that's exactly what it was. It was because I was made to feel like I should be proud of my culture. I've now ended up working in an industry where I promote my culture and I promote being diverse and selling, almost not selling because we shouldn't have to do that, but proudly kind of speaking about why diversity is important.
That's really curious. Like, I'm still trying to, when you talk about cultural identity, you're so lucky that you're around that sort of culture, and your father was so proud, and to bring you up so proud. I grew up in Leicestershire, and Leicester's the massive Curry Mile or Golden Mile, whatever it's called, on Bargrave Road. And I still thinking, I'm still fighting with the whole thing of like, being South Asian
Mm.
or, you know, being Indian, but then it's that part of you where that generation also went to Africa. So then it's like, I want to explore more about that. And then, you know, I've got a little one who's mixed, like totally mixed race, you know, Spanish, English, Indian, it's like Irish. It's just like a massive mix. And it's like, what does cultural identity mean? Because you're like, how do you expose them to everything? And like, you know, maybe it's the best bits of every culture that I want to like teach him about. But it's such a, I think it's a very difficult question because it really makes you think about who you are. You know, it's very, I think it's really, you can be there all day procrastinating.
You can, and it is subjective because even though, you know, let's say you're South Asian, I'm South Asian, how we identify ourselves and you know, what we align to, what we our belief systems and everything is very, very different. So I don't think that just because you're South Asian you should, you know, only be proud of the fact that you're just South Asian. You know, I'm South Asian, I'm British, you know, we've adopted this culture, we were born in this country, so yeah, you know, I'm proud to be a British Asian. And with that comes so many different ways to identify yourself. So even though I say I'm proud to be South Asian and I'm proud, you know, I talk about diversity, all of those things, but again, you kind of don't want to be put into a box either, because there's so many more elements and layers to who you are. So you're right, you know, it is subjective, and you know, it can be difficult to kind of really put yourself into a little hole to say that I'm just
it's true, because you know when you have your exams where you're filling out an application form and it's like tick a box, ethnic origin, and I'm like, well,
where do I say
this, isn't it? I'd like to do all of these, but it's true. It's like we're like identified into a little box, but I think deep down it's way more than that. You know, it becomes a bit more like, I don't know, not Pandora's box, but it kind of just unravels. So I want to take a step back. So I want to talk about your childhood a little bit. So many South Asian households were surrounded by food, your favorite dishes, and you know, mealtime is what's the time where you would talk and discuss, you know, what you want to do, your dreams, desires, things like that. What was it like growing up for you? Like, was it similar in terms of food and talking and telling your parents, I want to do something different, I don't want to do this? Like, what was it like?
So I don't think that we really had a voice, you know, like I look at like my nieces and nephews now, and they have like a big voice, like they, you know, they will talk about their wants, their needs, their aspirations, their desires, very openly. And there's an open dialogue between, like, you know, let's say my brothers, my cousins and their children about what they want to do. And, you know, they'll question the child and they'll ask them questions. But I think when we were growing up, we weren't really asked questions. There wasn't a dialogue as such. Not to say that we were suppressed or we were unhappy, you know, had a great childhood, but obviously it was very strict and very controlled. There wasn't freedom in that sense of speech. There wasn't freedom of speech, definitely. And but food was a massive part of growing up. My house, my parents' house, was like an open house.
Wow.
People would just turn up at any given time of the day and say, or they'd call to say, we're like half an hour away, and you know, we're popping over. Then all of a sudden, pandemonium, like, clean the house, get this, get that. My dad would go out and buy meat and alcohol, and you know, my mum would jump straight into the kitchen and start chopping onions, and you know, and it was just always just something going on. And I think that actually that adrenaline, like, it was just always there growing up. And now I look back and I think, God, it was healthy because it was exciting, but I'm not sure how healthy that is now to continue. Just thinking about it now, so it was great because we always had people over, cousins. I mean, we've got a really big family. My mum's one of 8, so you know, I've got a lot of cousins from that side, and my dad's got a big family too. So food was a very big part of growing up. You know, you'd be having lunch, but you'd already be talking about you know, what we're having for dinner. Like we're not even finished lunch yet, Mum. And I do that now. My husband
I do that.
we haven't even planned for lunch, and can we please just get past 12 o'clock before we start talking about dinner? And I'm like, no, but I've got to plan it, and it's always like a really big deal.
I do exactly the same thing, and Carlos is looking at me like, can I just enjoy this moment of eating my breakfast? And I'm like, but I've got to plan. It's the same thing. I'm like, I've got to plan. I've got to go shopping. He's like, there must be something in the kitchen. Yeah, no,
I know. But like preparing food in like big, like, you know, pots, like lots of meat, and, you know, like being cooked, like visually I remember just like, you know, parents just in the kitchen. And my dad is actually, you know, he enjoys to cook as well. So when I was growing up, I actually saw my dad cooking quite a lot, which I think is quite nice, because even now people say to me, oh, my dad would, you know, my dad doesn't cook, he doesn't, you know, he doesn't get into the kitchen. I'm like, I remember seeing my dad cooking quite a lot, you know, when I was growing up. The food was, you know, it could be hit and miss sometimes. Don't get me wrong, but you know, I did see him growing up. I did see a lot of him in the kitchen growing up, which I think was quite nice for a girl to see that. Yeah. So I think that was quite a common thing though with South Asians, don't you think?
I think so. Yeah, definitely, because like it's a whole thing of like someone's coming and you have like those, I don't know what they're called, but they're called like those beach mats. So we call them sadris, and you have them all on the floor, and you have the pots, and then everyone's eating and drinking, and there's like 3, 4, 5 starters, and then loads of curry, and then rice, and then
absolutely.
There was never dessert. It was always that aniseed sawadana.
Oh, it's like a barn kind of mix. Or something.
It's like colourful. Hundreds and thousands, but
I know exactly what you're talking about.
And that would be your dessert. So as a kid, I'm like, this is disgusting. You don't have chocolate. Sitting on the floor was a big thing. Definitely.
Sitting on the floor and eating. I actually met my cousin just a couple of days ago, and she said, oh, don't you remember, you always used to love sitting in front of the TV on the floor. You'd have like your pot of ice cream or something, and you slowly eat it. And I was just like, so I was like, you know what, we all sat on the floor. Like sometimes we just put like a cloth on the floor, and we'd all sit down together and eat, which I think is actually quite nice.
It is
together as
I like it.
Doing that.
Yeah, because you're all kind of sharing an experience, and then like everyone's kind of together, you know. And for me, it's one of my most happiest memories of a child growing up. Now life is so different, and we don't have that sort of environment, so to speak. But it was one of the happiest times, because that's where you're all, you know, nattering and chomping together, and it's like, you know, the kids are with the adult. It wasn't a thing of like men sit in one room and the women in another room. It was like everyone in this tall terrace houses with high ceilings, and you're like kind of like immersed within each other, and it was really nice. And you know, talk about men cooking, sadly my father cannot cook really, but all his brothers cook amazing. So whenever I go back to Leicester, I will go to my mother's, and he will make me like meatballs and chicken and
nice.
Like literally everything I want, he will make it. And then, you know, during my pregnancy, I got the biggest like box of food, and like I had chapatis, paratha. I had all my green curry, you know, vegetable curries. And being pregnant was amazing, because I was like, oh, I got home cooked food, and like it was in the mail. I was like, this is so good. And
that's amazing.
I think men are really good cooks. Even my masa makes really good broiler chicken. It was more about the soup, because there's not much meat on the actual chicken, and it's more about when you have a cold, you will have broiler chicken, because it's all the nutrients from the actual chicken that you get with the spices, and you just drink it more than anything. It was good. Like, it's like but it was really good. Like, you know, but okay, so I want to talk a little bit about your career. So as a professional, you've worked with brands to run influencer campaigns. What tools do you use to delve into the perfect influencer for that given campaign?
So I there's lots of different ways that influencer agencies kind of identify the right talent. I would say mine is a lot more authentic, in the sense that it's quite hands-on. So I would physically go and do my own searches. So there's softwares that, you know, there's 2 or 3 softwares at the moment that I can obviously use to track the campaigns and, you know, to create that kind of structure behind it and make sure that we can, you know, identify the ROI and all of those things. But I think to identify the talent for a campaign is something that I would do myself. There's a lot of things that you need to be mindful of when you're you know, trying to marry an influencer with a brand. So you need to make sure that the influencer has a similar tone of voice to the brand.
Okay.
So, you know, what is it? What does the brand stand for? What does the influencer stand for? What language does the influencer use? Would that sit well with the brand, for example? How often does an influencer post? Do they have consistency? So if they have consistency, that means that they are very active. They obviously take their career on socials quite seriously. And so these things are obviously very, very important. And also just kind of, you know, knowing and understanding their journey. So going really, you know, far down into that profile and just checking what they might have been talking about a year ago as opposed to now. How have they developed? And trying to find hooks and stories that you can kind of almost make that person the person that the brand should be working with, and you know, sort of looking for stories in that way. So I feel like that's very unique in terms of what we do at Red Media. Is, you know, we go deep into you know, the actual persona of the person and then present that to the brand.
Okay.
And you know, my dealings with other agencies, I feel like it's always been very top level, like, okay, these are the numbers, which are very important. Numbers are important, the demographics, their engagement rates and all of those things. But I feel like that you're dealing with an actual real person here. There's a real person, he or she, or they, and that is what the brand should be connected to first and foremost. And then all those other things then would then, okay, you know, do they have the engagement? Do they have the demographics, et cetera, et cetera? So when I present my list of influencers to a brand, I'll always have a story to tell about them. And that's something that I'm, you know, that I feel is very unique about what Red Media Live does. And that's a lot of kind of, you know, manual work there that you put in to kind of like trying to identify that person is right for your brand. And that's not something that I would ever change about what we do.
Okay, because I read, I saw your this little video on YouTube about Tilda. So you did a campaign with Tilda. How did, because when I saw the clip, it was really organic. You know, every one of those influencers had their own take on using Tilda rice. And as a kid growing up, every household had Tilda in a 20 kg bag. So it was like nostalgia mixed with your home dishes. How much, because every video was different, how much creative control did you give to those influencers? Because everyone had their personal style and take on the video they created for that campaign.
That's a really good, really, really good question, because what happens is that when a brand obviously invests in influencer marketing, there's lots of different ways that they can be involved. So they can give full creative freedom to the talent and say, right, as long as you're sort of ticking one, two, three, 4 boxes for us, the rest is kind of up to you. And I think that way works for some brands, but a brand like Tilda, for example, which is such an established brand, it's a heritage brand almost. They were obviously very you know, kind of particular about how the content should be delivered, which I 100% agreed with, because they hadn't done a lot of influencer campaigns. So whatever they deliver whatever we delivered for them, we had to make sure that it could be something they could use, for now and in many years to come. So there was quite a lot of direction that we had to give to the talent for this particular campaign. So I won't go into the details of it, but there was quite a lot of direction. The recipes and the ingredients were all theirs. And but the flow of the content, there was a level of kind of direction that was given to them. So now you can imagine a lot of those though that content was done through COVID, so it's not like I could physically be there. So a lot of it was done kind of like, I could laugh about it now, but it was very, very intense, because influencers have to send piece by piece content as they're filming, and then I'm getting it kind of signed off, piece by piece. But thankfully it all worked out really well. And obviously when you see the content now, you can't tell that there was a lot of work that went into making sure that we were ticking all of the boxes for Tilda, and making sure they were happy, and making sure the influencers are happy as well. Because a part of what I do with my talent on, with my skills and kind of talent management, is managing the talent and just kind of having their back in a way, that knowing that I know their worth, and kind of bending where I have to, maybe telling them to bend where they have to kind of get things over the line. So yeah, I hope I've answered your question, but yeah, there is a lot of work that goes into making sure that the content is right, because once it's filmed, once all the effort's gone into it, you can't keep revisiting it, and you can't expect people to refilm. Sometimes you have to, and I think where some talent are extremely professional, they understand that the long-term benefits of bending a little bit for the brand and adjusting here and there, it goes a long way, because you're building a long-term relationship with the brand. So yeah, I hope that's answered the question.
Definitely. But it's true, because from the clip you can't see that there's so much work that's gone into it from behind, but when you see it, so it flows and it's quite natural. But when you say every clip has to be signed off, you're like, oh my goodness, because it's all the background work that nobody sees. So when you see it, it is like, oh, that's it's a familiar type of video, something that people can go, oh, it's a comforting video, which is what I like. And I think it's because it's a household brand, and it's a heritage brand, what you just said. A lot of people can go, oh my god, oh yeah, like it's something that people connect with, which is why I was really curious. I was curious about how much creative control they also get, because it appears very organic, which is what I really like about it.
And I think that really comes down to how the project is managed as well. I've got a team of people working with me. We're making sure that whole process is seamless. We're making sure that talent is understands that this is important, that we must get sign off from the client. So I think working with us as an agency, and working with me as well, and it's taking me a long time sometimes to almost like give yourself credit for your input into projects. But I think a brand can, when I'm working on a project, the brand can be reassured that it will go the way that they want it to go, because I take that very, very seriously. That's a reflection on me and my work. So everything that I put out there is a reflection on me first, before it's a reflection on anybody else. And I take that very seriously. So I think that that's another benefit of kind of like, working with somebody, whether it's me or anybody else, but who knows what they're doing.
Wow, it's good, because you're like the silent partner behind that kind of coordinates it all. And it's like it's that same saying what's it called, My Big Fat Greek Wedding. I've said this in another podcast. It's the woman that the man can go any direction, but it's the woman that is the neck, and she like controls it in the direction like you want that person to go in. And it's the same sort of concept for this. You're literally directing it as the main connector for everybody. If that makes any sense. I'm the person that kind of like will kind of
make it happen and execute the whole project. And
you're the neck.
I'm the neck.
You're the neck.
Yes, I like it. I'm the neck. Yes, I think we should name this podcast "The Neck."
The neck.
Yeah. This series, this episode. Sorry,
So funny.
Brilliant.
So you recently launched Red Media Love. I love the name because it's so similar to your actual company.
Yes.
Your current company. So you've been collecting and preserving memories of South Asian families, and what started you to embark on this journey of storytelling? Because that's what you're doing. You're sharing these experiences, and it's, you're really digging deep into that person's life, but you're doing it in a more loving and caring manner of storytelling, like how
like meaningful. So I think this is going back to my upbringing and being proud of being South Asian, and understanding kind of like the importance of what it means to be the children of immigrants, and kind of respecting that process. We may not agree with our parents or our grandparents' life choices or their life choices for us, but I think there has to be some level of respect there, and that's carried through kind of like my younger years and into my adult life. But I think this whole idea really came from, I think when I was kind of late teens, I would hear locals in my area, the older generation, if I'd go to like, the Sikh place of worship, for example, the Gurdwara, and I would hear the elders talking about their stories about how they came here, what it was like. They had little money, sacrifices, the racism that they faced, all of those things. And I just had an interest for it. I mean, I can't say anything more than that. I just had this interest for, our historical stories. But I didn't have the tools or the resources to do anything with it. But it's something that just was always there, that I would love to document these people's stories and preserve them and showcase them to generations to come. So when I so about kind of 3 or 4 years ago, now that I've gone through my whole career and I've built up a very good contact base, my skill set, a couple of years ago, maybe like sort of 2-3 years ago, I thought, right, okay, within the next couple of years, I would like to work on projects that really kind of like highlight those stories. So I set up Red Media Love probably last year, or maybe earlier last year, and I then approached my local museum approached the local museum here where I live in Hertfordshire, and I said, look, I really want to do something for South Asian Heritage Month. So they hadn't heard of South Asian Heritage Month. I think it's quite a new festival anyway, or celebration, should I say. So told them a little bit about it, share some links, and they had said to me that this was now kind of October 21, November 21, and they said, look, in March 22, which was now 5 months ago, there's going to be a round of funding that's available for projects, so you should definitely pitch for the funding. I put together my kind of like pitch. I put it forward, got shortlisted, and then I had to basically present my idea to a bunch of councillors and MPs in my local area, and then they ultimately made the decision to fund the project. Now, the project itself, this one, is not about the first generation. That's something that I will get to. But this project is about the second and third generation of South Asians growing up in this area, because I'm kind of third generation here, but we had our own problems and our own challenges growing up. First generation were unbelievable how they managed to get through it, because they didn't understand the language so much, and we had the opportunity to go to school and integrate in some way. But we still had those challenges of identity, as you asked earlier on, what's your cultural identity? We had those struggles, and you know, do we go against our parents? Do we do the things we want to do, or do we do the things our parents want to do? So all of those things ultimately affected us massively. So that's what I want to address in this exhibition, and that is what we've done. Yeah,
because there's a quote I'm going to read to you right now. It's by Wolford Peterson. Walk with the dreamers, the believers, the courageous, the cheerful, the planners, the doers, the successful people with the heads in the clouds and the feet on the ground. Let the spirit ignite the fire within you to leave this world better than when you found it. That's what I think about when I think of your Red Media Love, because you're sharing these stories. Wow. What, you know, because I also read on your post that you know, that you did call, like, you did ask some people, but they were, you know, they didn't want to be a part of it. But do you think this documentary that you've created and this exhibition indirectly helps them give a voice as well and tell their story?
Yes, absolutely. That's lovely, by the way, the quote they just read, and the fact that you actually think that reminds you of what I'm doing. I mean, that's an honor. Thank you. Because when you're in the midst of it, you don't see, sometimes, you know, you don't see the bigger picture, and it's important to be reminded and remind yourself. So thank you for that. It was a challenge getting people together. I thought it was going to be really easy. I thought everybody would just be like, yeah, you know, I'd love to be a part of it, and let's share. But a lot of people had doubts. I use the word suspicious because that's the only word that I can think of to describe people's reactions. Yeah. But people were suspicious. Where is it going? You know, and I was very transparent. I told everybody, look, it's going in the museum. It's going to be archived, and it's forever going to be, you know, there. So, yeah. You know, maybe in 10 years' time, you know, the exhibition, you know, the museum may want to do the exhibition again. And I wouldn't really have a say in that because now we've kind of submitted everything to them. So people were very reluctant. And like you said in my post, I wasn't going to be a part of the exhibition. Okay. So that happened purely because I had to step in because, you know, the people did kind of, you know, pull out. Okay. They weren't willing to kind of, you know, bear it all, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Wow. But I'm hoping that with what you've created, they'll be feeling a sense of relief to go, oh, someone has experienced the same as me, so I feel like I've got to share through somebody else. It's a moment of touching on something that they've experienced.
Yeah, absolutely. I think everybody who's in the exhibition, who are kind of, you know, talking about some really deep things like mental health, you know, divorce, family setups, you know, there's death, you know, and legacy and all of these things. I think that everybody who watches it, even if you're not South Asian, you'll be able to relate to at least one topic that's going to be discussed by all of the 6 people in it. So, and mainly it will affect South Asians because we're talking about how decisions were made based off the restrictions that we faced as South Asians, growing up in a very strict environment. So yeah, and I think hopefully it will normalize some things for people. They'll feel like it's okay to talk about my problems because somebody's done it on such a big platform, and it will inspire them to kind of maybe ease themselves of, you know, of their own troubles or challenges that they had.
No, definitely. But this is my last question.
Okay.
So you're an advocate for diversity, equality, and inclusion. You know, you're a South Asian woman that's, you know, pushing out the boundaries. You're breaking the boundaries. You did, like, you're really, for a young girl that's looking up to you or has heard of you, they'll be thinking, if she can do it, I can do it. What tips would you give someone starting out in the industry of marketing, influencer marketing, you know, something that you kind of grown into becoming? So
yeah, good question. And I'm not trying to say that I'm the person that you should come to for advice, obviously, but I'll give you my opinion. I think that educating yourself is key. There's so many courses that are available now that, you know, sometimes I wish were available when I was growing up. It's it's so important to understand your industry from that perspective. So if you have courses, if you're at university, you can do other courses as well. There's so many things online that are available. And network. Get yourself out there. Go to the right events. Whether they're career kind of events, career fairs or whatever it is. Just put yourself out there and network with people. Get them to see you for who you are. Build relationships and utilize those relationships. Reach out to people. Don't be afraid to put yourself forward. If you're looking for an internship, or if you're looking to get work experience, don't be afraid to just reach out to marketing heads for brands. There's nothing stopping you. You've got nothing to lose. But I would say that educating yourself is really, really important. And marketing is changing so much more on a daily, weekly, monthly basis because of all, a lot of it's obviously gone digital now. So, there's so many ways that you can really find your niche now.
Yeah.
There's so many things. Find your niche as well. And if you want to find your niche, if you feel like you can really, latch onto something and develop it, for me, it was the South Asian or the multicultural marketing angle. That was my thing. And I just latched onto it and I just ran with it. And I, developed myself in that industry. So yeah, I mean, it's probably the most obvious things that I've said, but I think sometimes what happens is that we live in a generation where you see somebody on TikTok or on Instagram grow from 10,000 to 1 million followers in overnight. And, it's that hustle kind of like mentality. We've got to hustle. We've got to, we've got to hustle. We've got to work, 28 hours a day. Right. But do that. I'm not saying you shouldn't do that, but if you're doing it, find your purpose. Focus on something that's actually going to benefit you rather than just trying to be good at everything. Focus on one thing and develop that. So, I mean, there's probably like about 6 or 7 bits of advice that I've given there. So I'm hoping whoever watches can kind of like take what they want from it. But yeah.
That's fantastic. Well, Mandeep, it's been educational and absolutely wonderful having you on the Naughty Bites podcast. And I want to say thank you so much for taking the time today and having a chat with me.
Thank you so much. This has been great. Honestly, thank you.
Have a great day. Bye.
And you.
Bye.